Well, hello there, how is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fabulous Wednesday. Midweek hump, baby, that's it. And in video one, I got that completely wrong because I thought it was Thursday. So for any of you that I managed to convince we'd gone into the future somehow, I do apologise. But look, it's just going to be a brief one. I'm not going to drag this out too much. A couple of things to touch on. Firstly, we're just going to touch on briefly the fact that there has been a new document drop, and that is talking about that there's two hearings on the same day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and the morning one, which is looking at, the dismissal. The Brian Kohberger case being dismissed for multiple reasons to do with the grand jury, misconduct in the way that it's been handled, all sorts of different bits and pieces. That is going to be behind closed doors. You're not going to be able to see any of that. And I do wonder whether that is kind of the way that things are going to be now. Currently, like I say, the afternoon hearing is still public, as we know, but I do wonder whether the one in the morning they feel is going to be the one that there's going to be more that points the finger at, the system, the prosecution, the way in which they have done things. And there's always funny, isn't it? They don't seem to want public to have access to things that could paint the prosecution and the system in a bad light. But then when it's to do with being more open, and they kind of let you see that, because it's what can I say? I'm not going to say too much because I might get cancelled, like Russell Brand. And that's proof in a nutshell that you have to be careful when you're trying to bring out the truth. For those of you who don't know about Russell Brand, go and check that out, because that is crazy. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, closed in the afternoon, open in the afternoon so far, and just you think about what's happening in the Delphi case. If you don't know what's happening in the Delphi case, if you didn't watch video 1 of 2 today after this video, please go and check it out, because that proves, in my opinion, in my non-professional opinion, that shit like this, what we're seeing in the Idaho 4 case, needs to be looked at with much closer eyes, because that proves that when they want a result, they will get one no matter what, and no matter who they need to throw under the bus to get it. But what am I going to talk about for the rest of this video, very briefly, is just a lot of you have reached out to me with reference to Huda London. Huda London is a channel I said go and check out. She was bringing out some more information, going right back to the beginning and speaking about some things that had come up. Maybe you guys who hadn't been here right from the start had missed. Some of you who have been right from the start and perhaps missed. Some of you who have changed your thought process throughout this process, and you're more open to seeing and hearing some of the stuff from earlier on that perhaps originally you discounted, you ignored and didn't see. And the latest is with respect of a post that was supposedly from one of Brian's relatives. Now, they go on to say, we're anonymous, we're doing this anonymously, but then later on in that post, they basically make it sound like they're Brian's sister, because they say, Brian and my dad will sue the arses off you. And they're talking about Brian Kohberger in a situation that would lead you to believe that he was there with somebody else, he left them there, he didn't know what they were going to do, and they would go on to do this, and Brian is remorseful for this, and this other person was a peeping Tom, so on and so forth. I offer that post absolutely no credence whatsoever. Now, the post itself, sadly, because of how it's worded and the thought process that a lot of people have with this crime and how it was potentially committed, that does offer it credence, because it's saying that Brian Kohberger was potentially a driver. He drove someone over there and someone did this crime. And do you know what? I've always said I felt that Brian Kohberger was involved, but perhaps in a different context than what's being pushed out. Perhaps he was a driver. Perhaps he was just part of a bigger picture. I just didn't see him being able to do what needed to be done in the time frame with which it was done in, with such precision and skill, and have absolutely no help whatsoever. Go into this absolutely blind. And even if you want to say he he went into it absolutely blind, but to say that he did it like this, but he hadn't done it previously either. So this is the first time doing it and going in blind to do it with this efficiency just didn't sit right to me. So I did see him in a different. If he was involved, then it would have been in a different, in a different position than being the person who actually entered the house and done the crime. And the fact that you've got witness statements that say that someone had come in and said, I'm here to help you, that plays into this, where could Brian Kohberger have driven someone over there and, he's then thought, what are they doing? And he's gone into the house to find out what's going on, and he's like, I'm here to help, but he sadly goes into the property and it's already been done. It's already done, but perhaps that person has left. The problem that I have with this post is that they go into it saying they're anonymous. They go into it saying they're anonymous, and then they very quickly turn around and say that they're, that it's Brian and my dad. And I wonder whether if this person was truly a relative of Brian and had this information, why they just wouldn't have gone to law enforcement rather than adding to the stuff that was online. The family we've seen, the family of Brian Kohberger have been very, very quiet. They haven't come out and said anything. There's been no statements. The only post that we've even seen with respect of Brian's family per se is the mum's very early posts that were from before all this on Reddit, where she had her own channel that was looking at doing little trinkets for the home and things like that. She built herself a little community, and she would talk about Brian going off to college and how she worried about Brian. He was going to be a distance away from them. She worried about him making friends. It was a mum and a son, and the mum doing the mum thing and worrying about how her son would be on his own. She was obviously or seemingly acutely aware that he struggled to make friends, perhaps, and that was a concern to her. But that's all we've seen. So, like I say, posts like this, to me, they do fall down. There's elements of them that kind of go hand in hand with some things you can think about with respect of what you believe could have happened. Brian being a driver, for instance, and someone else doing it. And we've got the Brent Kohberger situation in the background, which, Brent Kohberger, God rest his soul, if Brian Kohberger genuinely didn't do this, he would be the number one suspect. Someone who has got military background, military skills, access to weapons, had said he was going to kill his roommates and subsequently got, executed himself. It's one of them, isn't it? It's a very strange situation, and we do know that is an ongoing investigation into exactly what did happen there, and there's questions around it. And again, I do still push out, if Brian Kohberger is innocent, then by default that means someone else is guilty. If it wasn't Brent Kohberger, it wasn't Brian Kohberger, then who the fuck was it then? Was it just some random person that came into this place? I don't buy that. I don't buy that there was any form of randomness to it. I believe that whoever did this knew the property, knew the people in it. They knew what they were going to face in that property. They potentially knew what they were likely to face on that specific night too, because of all the vehicles that are outside and the people who were over, the night that they picked. And to walk in there with just that weapon, if they did so alone, they would have had to have known so much to confidently go in there and do this crime. That's my opinion. But with respect to this post, for those of you who have reached out and said, what do you think? Have you seen it? I have seen it. I know I offered it absolutely no credence whatsoever. But I do fully understand and appreciate why so many people perhaps do feel that there are elements to it that are accurate. Now, could it have been written by someone else posing as Brian's family? And is there elements of truth within that? The jury's out on that. I can't answer that question. All I know is, at the moment, in terms of Brian Kohberger and what is out in the public domain, for me to make a decision on, can I say that Brian Kohberger did this crime, he did it on his own, and he is the person who needs to be executed for doing so, there is not enough for me to say, yes, go ahead, execute the guy. There just simply is not. And what with the revelations in the Delphi case and Richard Allen, it furthermore proves to me that law enforcement is a machine that can be corrupted. And sometimes it's about time, and it's about whether there's things in the background. In the Delphi case, we know that there was people in power who were coming up for re-election, and that was a feather in their cap. You know, they've got the guy who did this crime, and they overlooked so many things. They hid, and that's the accusation, they hid exculpatory evidence. And what do we see in the Brian Kohberger case? There's a potential that there is withholding of exculpatory evidence. We've heard with regards to Bethany Funk. We don't know the truth in it, we don't know the facts of it, but look, when you hear things like you are over in the Delphi case, and then you're considering what you've seen and what you've heard in this case, it raises questions. It furthermore raises questions. And with this camera situation and them seemingly wanting to hide the important pieces of information, the things that do rarely, or you expect to bring question the system and the people within it, there should be absolute truth and transparency, because without that truth and transparency, you're gonna get the rumor mill. You're gonna get people who make their own decisions as to why it's happening. And when all is said and done, if nobody sees how they get to the outcome, how many people are going to be happy with whatever that outcome is? Will the families be happy? Will Steve Gonsalves be happy? Steve, yourself, if you watch this video, let me know. Let me know down below. Email me. Will you genuinely be happy if there's no cameras and nobody sees it, but there is a conclusion? Will you be satisfied? Let me know down below. Enjoy the rest of your midweek hump, and I shall catch you all, that's right, in the next one.